Hey, welcome back to coverage of MXP Tacoma, the Modern 20K headline event. I'm Reed Duke here with Noah Walker. And this round, Noah, we have Izzet versus Izzet. We have Preordain versus Preordain. So, with the recent unbanning of Preordain, which has not seen the light of modern play since 2011 or 12, um, it's a lot of players are asking the question of how to best use this card in a competitive setting. Um, let's have a look at well, either our match table or the deck list that we're going to have on screen this round. All right, Izzet Tempo by Devin Straub. So walk us through this one, Noah.
Yeah, so you know, Devin's deck list is really focused around, I'd say, Dreadhorde Arcanist and Snapcaster Mage, and really getting the best value out of those cards as you can. Preordain being basically the perfect inclusion for a deck like this. He's going to want to cast early a Preordain or Consider, hopefully get a turn 2 Dreadhorde Arcanist, and then just get incremental value by attacking with it every turn and recasting these Preordains, these Considers, these Lightning Bolts. So in this deck, I think Preordain is going to do a really fantastic job at finding these more specific cards, right? Like, so he only has the 4 Dreadhorde Arcanists, the two Murktide Regents. I feel like those are his main threats, the cards that are going to win the game for him. So Preordain being able to see as many as 3 cards is absolutely massive for finding those.
So I'm going to level with you. I forgot that Dreadhorde Arcanist was a legal card that you could play with in Modern. Is this something that is going to make a comeback because of Preordain? Like, what's your evaluation of Dreadhorde Arcanist right now?
I'm going to level with you, Reed. It was the exact same way. When I saw it, my eyes kind of like lit up because you know me, I love Legacy, and Dreadhorde Arcanist. He's too good for that format. So I don't get to play with the card too often myself. I think it's incredibly powerful, and I think that using it to cast Preordain a bunch of times is one of the best ways that you could use it. So I think that we're going to see a pretty big resurgence in the card. If I'm being completely honest, I think that it could be super powerful in like maybe even some sort of Grixis Shadow Shell where you can play like the card Unearth, and then there's tons of options with it, and I think that Preordain is going to do a great job of bringing cards like that to light.
Yeah, so just to cap off the Dreadhorde Arcanist conversation, it pairs well with the recent unbanning of Preordain, and it pairs well with the recent printing of Flame of Anor because it's a wizard. So that Izzet Tempo deck from Devin has Dreadhorde Arcanist and Snapcaster Mage with 3 copies of Flame of Anor. I think if you get to resolve that card for 2 modes with a wizard on the battlefield, you're just a massive favorite to win the game. That is so powerful, and I hope we get to see that on camera at some point. Having a very different take on the Izzet color combination, we have Izzet Prowess, Soulscar Mage, also notably a wizard, though this deck not really pushing the tribal synergies, more just trying to get the opponent dead with hard-hitting creatures.
I mean, I think Izzet Prowess, another deck that benefits greatly from the existence of Preordain in Modern. It's a sort of deck where you're looking for very specific cards, so being able to see up to three cards with it is absolutely massive. And then you want to cast a lot of spells in the same turn. So I think we saw some copies of cards like Light Up the Stage in a deck like this, and I think Preordain is really comparable to Light Up the Stage. You're seeing 2 cards, you could possibly you cast them that turn. So it seems like it really slotted in well there, and in a deck like this, it's going to help. You got your Monetary Swift Spears in play, you got your Sprite Dragons in play, you got your Soulscar Mages in play. You just want to be casting as many spells as you can, and Preordain's really going to help, Travis chain his spells together.
Yeah, I'm a longtime fan of the Red Prowess sort of broader archetype. I love the card Lava Dart, so when that was reprinted in Modern Horizons 1, I was very excited about Red Prowess, and one of the cool things about it is that it can take so many different forms. But Travis Anderson's deck has this additional angle of Underworld Breach. You can pair that with a haste creature. You can pair it with a million copies of mutagenic growth or just burn spells. So in addition to being like this really potent aggro deck, there's also a combo finish that Travis Anderson can unlock under the right circumstances.
And I think it's really interesting to note that, in Travis's Izzet Prowess deck, he's decided to include Preordain while not playing any copies of Consider. So he's really valuing, the ability to look at possibly extra cards more than the instant speed, which makes a lot of sense when you're going to be, casting it at sorcery speed anyways to get your prowess triggers. But, it's not nothing that, putting extra cards in your graveyard with Consider helps out your Underworld Breach. As you mentioned, Reed, Lava Dart is a big one. You could possibly mill over a Lava Dart with these Considers. So it's a really interesting decision that Travis chose, and I think it might pay off for him.
It's a beautiful matchup because Devin's deck is all about finesse. It's all about, operate at instant speed, make my cards line up, unlock the wizard synergy with Flame of Anor, all these different things. And Travis Anderson is just going for power, power, power. Like, I want Preordain over Consider because it does the job better. I want my creatures to deal a lot of damage as quickly as possible. I want all my cards to be as cheap and efficient as they could possibly be. And we're going to see, who comes out on top in the head-to-head.
You got that right. Travis, a man after my own heart, faces the place. That's where you got to go. The creatures are there for a reason, turn sideways. So we'll see, if Travis can, take over the game with his Sprite Dragon, or if Devin has an answer for it. Because Travis has so many cheap spells in his deck that Devin can't really afford to just let it sit around.
Untapping with a Sprite Dragon here is a pretty dangerous situation from Devin's perspective. Like, you got to think if he had a Lightning Bolt, he would have just got that thing dead right away. Unless, he has a specific read on the situation, thinks his opponent might have mutagenic growth, but I would be shaking in my boots if my opponent untapped with the 2/2 Sprite Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at Devin's list here and seeing that, 4 Lightning Bolt, 2 Unholy Heat, looking like the only, 1 or 2 mana answers for this Sprite Dragon. And then, the 3 Flame of Anors is the big one. But luckily for Devin, Travis did not have too many non-creature spells to cast. In fact, he had none. So the Sprite Dragon not going to be taking over the game immediately, giving Devin a little bit more time to possibly find one of these Flame of Anors to answer it. And right here is like a huge opportunity for a Lightning Bolt. So we'll see if Devin is able to come up with something.
Counter spell really not at its best against the Izzet Prowess deck for the very simple reason that all the cards cost 1 and 2 mana. But there, Devin is just like, I have to use this card in whatever way I can. So he passes with 2 mana open, pulls the trigger on the Soulscar Mage right away, which I agree with. You just have to make that trade and prevent yourself from falling further behind.
Totally, especially, as Devin, as we can see, he doesn't have this Lightning Bolt. He doesn't have this Unholy Heat. So he's just hoping to use his cards in whatever way that he can, keeping up 2 mana and getting the luxury to resolve a counter spell in this matchup while not being dead to stuff seems pretty good for him. I'm curious to see what he would keep on top that is not Lightning Bolt or Unholy Heat. So really interesting one here from Devin, not having the answer to the Sprite Dragon while also still keeping on top with his Preordain. So
right. Yeah, you're not going to keep a counter spell when you're behind on the board. You're not going to keep a creature that can't fight the Sprite Dragon in combat. Maybe like a Murktide, and then you're setting up for next turn.
Yeah, maybe he's setting up for something big next turn with a Murktide. It could possibly be this Flame of Anor. Maybe he says, hey, last turn, Travis really didn't show me anything, to grow this Sprite Dragon. I bet that he doesn't have anything this turn. So maybe he's saying, I can afford to take 1 turn off to make sure that I have an answer.
So checking in, we, I think, do not have Delirium. Creature, sorcery, or creature, artifact, and land only.
Yeah, no instants or sorceries yet is really strange. That one's looking like a Lightning Bolt. Lava Dart.
Oh, the surveil value, lava dart into the graveyard. So counterspell lightning bolt, but you can't be happy if you're Devin here. It's like, okay, I'm counterspelling a 1 mana
Oh yeah,
card.
2.
No, he not only is he not happy, he is very dead. But yeah,
That's
counterspelling a 1 mana card when you're just hemorrhaging life points against the creatures. And in game number 1, it is the power of the Izzet Prowess deck winning out over the finesse of the Izzet Tempo deck. But in part, Travis Anderson got to go first, had a good draw. Devin drew multiple copies of Counterspell, which I would consider to be kind of a clunky card in the matchup. And now, if he's able to customize his deck by maybe taking out some of those counters in favor of more removal, he could definitely still be very much in this.
If you're Devin, you're looking at your engineered explosives in your sideboard. You're looking at your Chalice of the Void, thinking these cards could help me out here. It sucks because Chalice on 1, shuts off a lot of his deck and like kind of the main point of his deck with these Dreadhorde Arcanists and these Snapcaster Mages. But I think it might hurt Travis even more. So that's going to be an interesting one to see whether or not Devin decides, yeah, I know I only put these Chalices in my sideboard to really answer Rhinos and other zero cost spells, but maybe it's worth it for me to have it here.
Yeah, good thought. I'm curious to see as well. The bad news for Devin is he doesn't have any more just straight up burn spells in his sideboard. Like I would be reaching for as many copies of Lightning Bolt and Unholy Heat, heck, even Shock if I had it that I could get my hands on. What he does have though is Stern Scolding, which I think is going to be a dramatic improvement over Counterspell, just because you can trade even or trade up on mana instead of trading down.
It's going to be a huge one, kind of his extra answers of extra copies of Lightning Bolt that we're sort of talking about. Stern Scolding's kind of his blue Lightning Bolt, especially when you're going first, you can kind of expect to have that 1 mana be able to answer a lot of these 1 and 2 cost threats from Travis. So
Noah, what do you think about graveyard hate on either side of this matchup? I mean, are cards like Lava Dart, Underworld Breach, Murktide Regent, Snapcaster Mage, are they enough to want to have access to an unlicensed hearse?
it's tough because I'd say from Devin's perspective, since Hearst is a little bit slower in a matchup like this, you're kind of hoping for unlicensed Hearst against the other slow decks that are amassing these threats Agorio's Vengeance strategy or something like that. So it's kind of hard if you're Devin to spend 2 mana on something that isn't affecting the board at all and it's just focused on the graveyard. So I'd say for Devin, you don't really want to bring in the hearses. But if Travis had some sort of incidental graveyard interaction, I think that would be very good for him here. But I think instead of worrying about what Devin's doing, Travis just says, look, I came here with a plan, and my plan is to cast my prowess creatures and then make them bigger every turn. So I think he's a little bit less worried about exactly what Devin is doing and just making sure that his game plan is oiled perfectly.
It worked in game 1.
Yeah, that it did. Yeah, I think something really interesting about game 1 is the way that Travis played and prioritized getting as many of these prowess threats into play before using his lightning bolts. As we saw, he even tapped out, giving Devin the opportunity to maybe lightning bolt his Sprite Dragon just so that he could apply pressure with a couple more threats. So I think that was really disciplined of him. And then it was surprising for Devin that he even had the lightning bolts the following turn. So well played there, game 1 by Travis.
So we are calling both decks Izzet. Technically, Travis Anderson has access to white mana and some white sideboard cards, including Prismatic Ending and Path to Exile. Do you think he's interested in extra removal spells, or he just wants to get Devin dead?
Yeah, I mean, I could see something like Path to Exile being good in a matchup like this, just as a sort of answer to Murktide Regent. It's the
Sure.
biggest creature in the matchup. Might be a little bit hard to get through with some of your creatures. Prismatic Ending's okay. You know, it is a really good, nice, clean answer to Dreadhorde Arcanist. But at the same time, it's like, you know, Travis, as I keep saying, he didn't really come here to sit around in these games and answer your threats and stuff. He came here to attack. So I think that he's just going to really try to streamline his strategy as much as possible. Maybe bring in those 2 Path to Exiles just as a last ditch effort answer to some of these threats that could be a little more problematic. But I'd say his deck's probably going to stay pretty much similar to how it was game 1. Favorite interactions here, the Dreadhorde Arcanist with Mishra's Bauble. Super duper powerful turn 1 play.
I caught a glimpse. Travis looked at a second copy of Dragon's Rage Channeler and elected to keep it on top, which makes sense to me if you think, well, Devin's best way to win the game is just to burn all my creatures. Then keeping multiples to make sure you have a backup is a smart strategy. Spell Pierce tags Mishra's Bauble. So once again, this is Devin just trading early and often in whatever form, whatever trade he can get, he's taking it.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense because as the game goes later, you know, and Devin gets access to these Snapcaster Mages, access to these Dreadhorde Arcanists, it's going to be super hard for Travis to kind of, you know, gain advantage in games that play out like that. So
yeah, the Prowess deck is very much a critical mass type of deck. You know, you need to have your creature on the battlefield, you have multiple spells backup, maybe a little bit of burn to finish the opponent off. So the more you can attack their resources, the more challenging it is for them to actually put all those pieces into place.
like an incredibly strong follow up here from Travis with the turn 2 Sprite Dragon and another Mishra's Bauble. Kind of keeping the pressure going. It looks like he got a little bit excited to draw this card off the bauble.
Yeah, so a little bit of a dispute about the bauble trigger. I guess Devin was just slowing the game down a little bit.
Makes sense. He also wanted to respond to the bauble trigger with this lightning bolt, just in case, you know, of some sort of force of negation or something.
Yep, or mutagenic growth is another one that would be really scary there.
Totally, and we do know that, you know, looking at the lists, that Travis got 4 mutagenic growths there, so don't want to really give him an opportunity to draw one of those. So despite Travis's threats getting killed every turn of the game, he's got just like a handful of some more threats. You know, two of these Dragon's Rage Channelers. We've got this Underworld Breach to, you know, maybe overwhelm Devin once we get some of these threats set up. So
this game is very different from the first one because what we see is Devin successfully, you know, weathering the storm of the early Prowess creatures. But as we talked about, Travis's Izzet Prowess deck is multi-dimensional. So now, once he fails to get the opponent dead with his first flurry of creatures, he might turn his sights to, well, now I want to set up with my expressive iterations and play a mid-game Underworld Breach to get a ton of value and either leverage that to an advantage or just kill you out of nowhere.
Totally. Travis, you know, despite playing, I'd say, the more lean of these decks with a bunch of more low-to-the-ground cards and kind of seemingly, you know, more one-dimensional and like attack-focused, he's got these cards to really help him rebuild with Expressive Iteration, Underworld Breach. So at this point in the game, it's weird because, you know, Devin's kind of gotten to play the sort of game that he wants to play. A lot of one-for-ones. His life total is still pretty high. He's been able to preserve that pretty well. But he doesn't really have any of his big payoff cards to sort of, you know, get the game going. The Dreadhorde Arcanists, the Snapcaster Mages. So he doesn't have forever to find them.
I'll make a prediction about this game. I think if Devin is able to counter the Underworld Breach, he will win the game. But if he has nothing to disrupt and Travis is able to just have a breach turn uncontested, I think Travis is still going to win, even though Devin has had so many good exchanges early on in this game.
I mean, I think you're right about that. Breach will probably be one of the most important cards in this game. We'll see if Travis is able to resolve it. Here, I bet he's looking towards just resolving this expressive iteration while he can, or at least hoping to. Kind of set up possibly some more threats.
Yep, just continue filling the graveyard too. Expressive iteration so strong in these matchups once the dust has kind of settled and they're jockeying over card advantage.
Looks like it was met with another Spell Pierce. Really, really good for Devin to not let Travis see more cards. But, you know, he still does have a 3/3 flyer that's unanswered, and that's going to end the game in no time.
Oh, man. Who can draw more expressive iterations? That's the question. Pretty soon, Devin's going to be snapcastering expressive iterations.
A really classic Izzet battle here of since the game, you know, didn't end in the first couple turns, it's really going to come down to who can get the best value out of their cards.
Okay, well, if I've counted correctly, Devin has passed the turn tapped out with only one card in hand. So that means Travis can definitely resolve Underworld Breach if he chooses to. One card that he would really love to get here is just straight up Lightning Bolt, which can either kill the Dreadhorde Arcanist or threaten Devin's life total directly. Oh wow, Lava Dart. That's a nice one too because it can just represent so many more triggers from the Dragon's Rage Channeler. So what we're gonna see from the Underworld Breach is is that mutagenic growth. Travis is just gonna repeatedly cast spells from his graveyard and continue surveilling more fuel into the graveyard with the existing Dragon's Rage Channeler. Now it's not gonna be infinite, but what I'm seeing here is it's gonna be plenty because every 3 cards in the graveyard can represent a mutagenic growth for the cost of no mana, which is going to trigger a surveil and a +1/+1 on the Monastery Swiftspear. So, you know, while Devin might not be literally dead, I think he's going to be wind up being forced to chump block a massive Swiftspear. Alternatively, Travis can draw more cards off of, or generate more value off of Mishra's Bauble, and the end result is just going to be a really, really big favorable turn for Travis Anderson.
This one's looking really tough for Devin to come back from. And I think really funny there seeing Travis surveil, not even looking at the card, just immediately putting it in his graveyard because he knows right now his plan this turn is just to get as many cards in his graveyard, as you said, to just keep recasting this bauble. So he doesn't even care what's on top of his deck. It needs to go because his plan is to keep bobbling, have access to this mutagenic growth as many times as he can this turn. And it's really going to pay off for him. He's going to wind up with a huge threat in this Swiftspear, a bunch of cards to replenish his hand on the following turn from recasting this bauble so many times. So,
yeah, not to be too much of a backseat driver, but I feel like Travis could have just won with the mutagenic growth. Although maybe I should backtrack that because he has to worry about maintaining Delirium if he's going to take that approach. But you could cast the mutagenic growth several times and then also Lava Dart for 1 additional damage, and that puts a Mountain and another Surveil card into the graveyard. So it's close. He could definitely go for something, but as it stands, this is going to be plenty good because he's going to force the chump block on the Swiftspear, and then he's going to just draw 3 or 4 extra cards off these baubles.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough, as you're saying, like kind of towing this line of like, I want to cast as many spells as I can off my Underworld Breach, and I still want my Dragon's Rage Channeler, to have this Delirium, to be able to attack for 3. So yeah, I mean, it would have been really close to lethal with this mutagenic growth, and I'm not sure. But it's looking like no matter what, Travis is going to have huge attack here. He's cast Bobble, what, 3? I think this is either the third or fourth time, so his hand is going to go from having just about nothing in it to having a ton of cards. So interesting to see so many cards leave his graveyard. Now the Dragon's Rage Handler just doesn't have Delirium. And I don't actually think that the Swift Spear is big enough to present lethal. So
yeah, you're right. You're right. You know what Travis could have done is he could have declared his attackers first, and then if Devin declared no blocks, then you go for the win with the mutagenic growth. He also could have done some kind of middle ground where he did a few baubles and then made an attack while still having delirium. But as it is, he really went for just the full bauble value, which is fine. I mean, that's great, but it does mean he's going to have to wait until he untaps for a future turn before he actually puts this game away, or attempts to.
totally. Dreadhorde Arcanist for Bolt first things first. That makes a lot of sense. You just really need to get some of these threats off the board.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
Interesting to see what Devin can even do here. Like, yeah, he's gotten the Dragon's Rage Chandler off the board, but Travis just refilled his hand with 3 cards. He's possibly got 2 more coming, with this Bobble plus Draw Step. So yeah, untapping with the Dreadhorde Arcanist, huge, like really important for him. I don't know that it's enough, honestly.
You have to imagine that the Swift Spear can present a lethal attack. Although, maybe if Travis just had a bad selection of draws here with a bunch of fetch lands, it could be different.
Yeah, it's looking like he picked up a couple of good ones. Looks like a Sprite Dragon as well as a Lightning Bolt. So I think he's going to be able to produce a couple of lethal threats this turn. And unless Devin has some good answers, this might be it.
Devin would have loved a double mode Flame of Anor there, but didn't look like he had it.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
Sprite Dragon. Snapcaster Mage, potentially on Stern Scolding. Indeed.
Okay, I mean, that's probably one of the best cards Devin could have here, right? An answer to the threat that's incoming, as well as a blocker. But ooh, Lava Dart, such a brutal one, that Lava Dart.
Lava Dart you down to 4. The Swift Spear is now a 3/4. Lightning Bolt you. All right, that is Izzet Prowess defeating Izzet Tempo. It was hard for me to choose a winner there because I really liked elements of both of these decks, but just very, very, very good showing from Izzet. I really liked the speed and efficiency of this deck, but then also that backup plan of Underworld Breach is so powerful, and I think just very clearly won Travis a game that he should have been scheduled to lose based on just the classic knowledge of like larger mid-range deck weathering the storm of against the quicker beatdown deck.
Totally. I mean, we saw a game where it didn't play out perfectly for Devin, but like all but, right? Every single threat that Travis played, Devin had a clean answer for, and still somehow we saw this Izzet Prowess deck really be able to be resilient and push through all of these 1-for-1 answers and be like, hey, I might be playing the more aggressive build here of our 2 decks, but Underworld Breach can really help me catch up and compete with you. So
yeah, Izzet Prowess was an archetype that was not very well represented at Pro Tour Lord of the Rings a couple weeks ago, but it's still one of my favorite decks in Modern, one of the ones that I personally find most appealing. So I hope we get another chance to watch Travis or maybe some other Prowess mages over the course of the weekend. In the meantime, do we have a backup match for round 3? We do indeed. We have Zachary Smith with Mono Green Tron, only a matter of time. I knew before we saw this deck on camera. And Peter, I'm not sure how to say Peter's last name, so I'll save myself some embarrassment there. But Jun Sagavan, again, a second Jun Sagavan player on camera, giving the crowd what they want.
It's Christmas in Reed Duke land here.
Yeah.
Just another,
The crowd being
Jun
me.
deck. Yeah. But, you know, Reed, I'm sure you've probably played against your fair share of Tron decks with Jund. That can't be exactly what you're looking to play against when you're playing something like Jund.
No, definitely not. Inherently, this is not a strong matchup. Though, you know, this is a tournament where I think everyone knew Tron was going to be out there, so maybe Peter packed a couple of potent sideboard cards. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he'll need them because this game is not looking particularly favorable.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I'm Peter here in this spot and I'm staring down a Wormcoil Engine, which, you know, it's not unkillable, but like even if you're able to find an answer for it, like the 3/3s are just going to also be really troublesome. Like, and being at 3 life, you know, I'm not happy. I'm not loving it.
Yeah, and if I know one thing about Tron, it's that where there's one Haymaker card, there's more. So while you're taking your couple of turns to fight through the Wormcoil Engine, they're just going to find another, you know, Ulamog or Ugin or whatever it might be.
Wait, and so it looks like the card that he had in play was Sundering Titan as the other one. I didn't exactly recognize the art. And then, so Peter's best play on his turn was to just trade for this giant Sundering Titan with his biggest creature and a lightning bolt, and then Zachary said, "Oh wait, actually, I'm also going to kill all of your lands."
Yeah, Tron going for the flawless victory here of you know, 20 life and the opponent having no permanence. Peter,
Yeah,
in theory, can rebuild with red and 6, but against this overwhelming board, I'm not optimistic on his behalf.
Hey, but I mean, if you're Peter and you're attacking with the Tarmogoyf here, you could be feeling worse, right? Like, the Tarmogoyf didn't even have to chump block a Wormcoil Engine today. Like, we're getting in there. So, really brave. And you know, Zachary's kind of out of gas. It looks like he just picked up a Sylvan Scrying, so like he doesn't have that much going on. If Peter's able to somehow find an answer to this Wormcoil Engine, you know, he's got these value engines in play with the Ren and 6. He's got the Tarmogoyf to deal some damage, so I think this will really come down to obviously finding an answer for the Wormcoil. Like Peter's really on the back foot. But then if Zachary has something like Urza Saga, here, let me take a look at his list. Because if he has an Urza Saga in his deck, okay, he doesn't. The game would basically end on the spot because he just drew a way to search it up in the Sylvan Scrying. So he doesn't actually have very many lands that he can get. You know, he's got these two Besejus, but he doesn't have too many lands to play with. So not the best draw for him.
So I wished on this Cursed Monkey Paw that I bought the other day that I would get to cover a Jund player on camera. But then the result is that now I just have to watch 45 minutes of the Jund player getting attacked by Wormcoil Engine.
With no lands in play.
Not exactly what I had. Yeah, with no lands in play. Not exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah, your dream turned into a nightmare very quickly. But hey, that's okay. At least you get to watch Jund.
We did get to see Jund win on camera earlier, which that was great. I enjoyed that. And I like that people are fighting the good fight. There was if for anyone interested, there was exactly one player who brought Jund to the Pro Tour. It was like 1 out of 270 some.
Wow.
But
it wasn't you.
It is no, it wasn't me. I tried. You know, I think Jund is okay. You do have to have some guts to show up with it, but it still has some good matchups, and if you do a good job with your deck list, I do think you can put up a decent result. I'll mention just something that's interesting to me is Peter here has Giganta as a companion, whereas our previous Jund player that we featured did not. So just showing you that there's some ways that you can customize it and make it your own.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. I wonder what the last Jund player chose to play instead, because it seems like, you know, having a nice extra value, how bad could it be?
Yeah, I think the one likely card somebody could choose is Childred, the Apocalypse. If you think what the One Ring is going to be a really defining card, you might choose that. There's of course, old school options like Liliana of the Veil, Seasoned Pyromancer. You could also just have some sideboard options.
Totally. So many different ways to build this deck.
Yeah, Fury, Endurance.
So I mean, here for Peter out of the sideboard, it's looking like we got 2 Alpine Moons, 1 Assassin's Trophy. Those are our big payoffs, or I shouldn't even say payoffs as much as like our biggest ways to keep ourselves in the game, kind of stop Zachary from really going off the rails and assembling Tron super early and taking over the game from there. And I guess
Yeah, cool. So one thing to note about Alpine Moon is that it is one-sided, so he doesn't have to worry about that hurting his own Urza sagas. He could name a Tron land, or he could even name Urza Saga if he wanted to, if Zachary has that. Another great weapon that Peter has is he has 2 Bosejus plus a third in the sideboard. So one thing he'll really be looking for is to assemble Ren and 6 plus Boseju to keep Zachary off of Tron. But yeah, I mean, tough matchup. No way to sugarcoat it. This is you don't bring Jund hoping to face Tron a bunch of times, and especially having lost game 1, he's going to need something special to happen to escape that one with a win.
yeah, totally. I mean, luckily he does have the full. I mean, it's not 4, but 3 Besejus is a lot. So being able to assemble Beseju plus Ren and 6 is a pretty realistic thing to happen for Peter here, and would obviously make Zachary really sad. But the other part about it, unlike these Tron decks of the past, where assembling some sort of thing to disrupt them off of their Tron kind of just ended the game because they were stranded with a bunch of 6 and 7 cost cards in their hand. These new Tron lists are just playing a lot of really potent 4 drops in Karn in the One Ring. So
Yeah.
assembling that combo is really important for Peter, but it doesn't just outright end the game like it might have even just 6 months ago or whatever. So really interesting.
Yeah, it's a great point, Noah. I was wondering when we were going to see the One Ring make its presence known, and Zachary does have the full 4 in his main deck. So this, of course, one of the most influential cards from the most recent set, Lord of the Rings. On the other side, we have Orcish Bowmasters, 4 of in Peter's Jund deck. So yeah, those are kind of the big 2, the ones that have been the most influential in Modern so far.
Cards. Okay, turn one Ragavan for Peter is basically exactly what he's looking for. He has to kind of get to the ground running, have these early plays, be able to disrupt Zachary to have any chance at winning this game. So really good turn 1 for Peter.
Yeah, I think that's right. Ragavan on the play, that is definitely a great plan against Tron, especially if you can back it up with some discard spells, some Bosejus, some Assassin's Trophies, whatever it might be.
Ancient Stirrings. I mean, that one's castable. I've
Sure.
seen worse.
Yeah, I've definitely seen worse.
Get a little land action going on. He's also, is just playing an Urza Saga deck, so we've got some random artifacts that we could just pick up off of this Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah, so it will depend on Peter's hand whether he values, Ancient Stirrings to put a land in his hand, or just keeping the treasure out there.
Totally. I mean, I think now, like as happy as you are to be in Peter's spot with the Tron Ragavan, like you kind of need more than just that, right? Like you need this interaction for the Tron pieces. Otherwise, the game could just get out of hand really quickly. And Zachary's doing exactly that. He went Tron piece into Tron piece with the map to find the third one. So it's Peter's time is limited once again.
Yeah, threatening the turn 3 Tron. Now, these are the the more interesting games where, all right, put it this way. When the Tron player assembles Tron and the game is close, if the Tron player is even or sometimes ahead already, then it's just a blowout, right? It's not interesting at all. But when Zachary's gonna make his third land drop, assemble Tron, but be facing this overwhelming board state and have to claw back using his Oblivion Stones, using creative Karn, wishing from the sideboard, that's when you might get a good game out of it. And don't forget, Peter has 5 mana available, so whatever Zach does, Peter can start cranking out Urza Saga constructs. He can play whatever instance he has available in his hand. He can play what he hits off of Ragavan, even including getting up to like Wormcoil Engine and Karn territory.
That's a great point, honestly. This Ragavan, normally not being able to cast too many cards from Zachary's deck, Peter's got all these mana sources, and not for nothing, these treasures that the Ragavan is making are going to make this Urza's Saga token pretty massive. So yeah, Zachary's got a lot of mana to his disposal, but the board that Peter is amassing is really bigger than it seems.
Okay, so Zach went after Urza's Saga, which makes sense. But Peter able to make a 3/3 construct in response. So Zach's life total has not been updated. He's at, I think, 13, and Peter already representing an attack for at least 7.
Another Saga for Peter. You do not love to see that at all. If you're Zach, just a main phase Bowmasters. We're really going for the damage here.
Yeah, so this has the advantage of amassing right away to get an extra point in combat. It has the disadvantage of being a poor way to play around a possible Oblivion Stone or Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Yeah, I think here Peter's just saying, I like my Bowmasters is so poor against you possibly answering my board anyways that the best opportunity that I'm going to have to win a game like this is one where you don't have the answer and I just was able to amass a board. no pun intended. That was big enough.
Okay, so we should have the Tron player dropping to something in the ballpark of 7 life. Not quite emergency territory, but getting close.
Is that a Shadow Spear?
Yeah, that should have been pre-combat to pump the construct.
It's all good. Oh no, not the O Stone. I mean, look, what really are you gonna do? If Zach has the O Stone and pops it, then the Bowmaster's only so good. But actually, Zach's only at 7, so you never know. His hand could just be a bunch of lands. I'm a little bit surprised to see Peter going for the greedier line with the main phase Bowmasters here. That's a good one.
Yeah, Alpine Moon. You have to imagine that one just came off the top there. Would have played it on a previous turn. All right, so Alpine Moon plus rebuild with some Urza Saga constructs. It's not nothing.
One really good part about the Urza Sagas here, it's gonna provide a threat, and then also, maybe he'll be able to search up something that profitably deals with this Oblivion Stone. I'm sure he still has the Haywire Mites in his deck, so.
Good point. I was checking for Pithing Needle, but Haywire Mite should get the job done as well.
But when you look at Peter's board, he doesn't have any green sources in play. He's just got the 2 Blood Crypts in the Swamp and the Urza Saga, so. Oh, Warping Whale? That's a nice clean answer to this end turn Saga token. So looking like a really good pickup here from Peter, which is I think it was a Ragavan. So now he can search up. Oh, I'm surprised to see this. I was thinking that he could maybe search up a Haywire Mite here with the Saga, dash Ragavan, and then use that treasure to finish off the Oblivion Stone. But I mean, it seems like Peter has different plans. Still getting the Mite. I don't know if he has any green sources though.
Yeah, if Peter has a land to play, he could still dash the Ragavan, but if not, then there's no real great play. Yeah, I agree with you, Noah, especially when you factor that Zach probably wants to spend this turn blowing up Oblivion Stone anyway to get rid of that Alpine Moon. Sometimes in a matchup like this, you say like, well, let's at least make them use the Oblivion Stone. But in this case, you know, that's just good for the Tron player anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that Peter didn't actually draw the Ragavan. You know, maybe he drew something else. But if he did, it definitely seems like a missed opportunity to maybe get this Oblivion Stone off the board and then provide some pressure. Luckily for him, you know, it's not like the Alpine Moon at this stage of the game is doing all that much. You know, Zach's already at 6 lands in play. He could have another land in hand and just have access to all the spells in his deck. So it's not the biggest deal that he no longer has this Alpine Moon to really keep Zach down on mana. But at the same time, how do you win as Peter? You know, it's like, yeah, Zach only has 7 life, but it's going to be a really hard game to finish out if you're the John Sagaman deck. So
Players just checking on the life totals. We did have a Haywire Mite hitting the graveyard there.
okay, I think I did see a Ragavan. Yeah, it looks like a little bit of a missed opportunity for Peter. I mean, I get where he was coming from. He wanted to get the most value that he could out of his cards, but sometimes it's worth it to sacrifice a little bit of value to get a good play going.
Yeah, so here's Karn with just way too much mana. We could see the Sundering Titan again. We could see Cityscape Leveler.
Like Sundering Titan, blow up some of your lands. That is about as bad as it gets if you're Peter. You know, he loses 2 of his lands, and then also it's just a huge threat. And then also, if he's able to answer it, it answers more of his lands. It's like you just do not love to see that. As you can see, Peter not loving seeing it either.
Yeah, and I like this line from Zach because you are starting to think like, what's the only way I can lose this game? It probably involves a flurry of lightning bolts. So let's take my opponent off of red mana and force them to draw multiple pieces before they can threaten me.
Burrowing Tomb, not really what Peter was looking for here. I mean, at this point, there's only so much that is even good. It's looking like there's a 1 ring off of this Ancient Stirrings. You know what? While Zach doesn't have very much life, I'm sure he could probably find something to end the game before that matters.
Well,
like
lots of copies of the One Ring.
1 ring into 1 ring. I mean, that's the best
Sure.
way to, you know, make sure that 1 ring doesn't deal you any damage. Urza Saga, not gonna cut it. Simply not cutting it this game.
No, it's almost impossible to imagine Peter even beating the board, let alone what Zach can find off of the One Ring and all these extra draw steps.
I mean, really showing the power of the One Ring here. I mean, not the best game to showcase it, but like showing how different, these Tron decks are than before. Whereas before, if you could, get them really low on cards, like they didn't really have too much to overload the game for you. They had like all these 1-for-1 threats. The One Ring really providing a consistent stream of card advantage and protection, just like a really, really powerful card.
Yeah, a lot of the weapons that people would have used to beat Tron in the past, Blood Moon, Alpine Moon, you name it. When a lot of those threats are just 4 mana, it's very scary.
But he didn't even dismember the token. He said, "I don't need to kill you for now." He said, "Let's see what you got, Peter." I respect it.
So even with a target on its head, this is going to be mono green Tron advancing to 3-0. This was a major deck of the Pro Tour a few weeks ago. With multiple people breaking into the top 8 and sort of Tron being in the spotlight again, you could always expect people to pack a few extra sideboard cards for it. But hey, this deck is good enough that even in the face of a hefty amount of hate, it can still win matches.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It kind of almost felt like the Pro Tour was like the Tron resurgence of the format. Like Tron has long been a really potent, modern staple of a deck, but really showing the resilience of these new builds. Zach saying, "Hey, I know this deck has a huge target on its head, and I'm going to bring it anyways, and I'm going to show you that I can beat the card Alpine Moon in play, that I can do well against these Haywire Mites and stuff." So I think that just goes to show how much this Tron deck has changed, how impactful these new cards like the One Ring are for it, and just the deck has always been really, really good. So it's showing that for sure. Oh
Alpine
wow!
Moon, no problem. Getting hit by Ragavan 3 times, no problem.
I think that Zach actually this game he next leveled himself a little bit. He decided not to dismember the token that was going to be jump blocking because he didn't want to go to 3 life and possibly lose to a lightning bolt. But I don't think that he was considering the fact that Peter didn't have any additional mana. He didn't have a red source available even if he had a lightning bolt. And now he has this Haywire Mite to answer the Sundering Titan. And yeah, it's not going to look great. Like his lands might die. But let's say that Zach just doesn't draw another threat for this game, right? Like he doesn't draw another card that can kill Peter. He's going to die to his One Ring.
Yeah, it's a good thought, Noah. I do agree with wanting to get the game over with when you have the clear window. Just to point out that the Haywire Mite can only exile a non-creature artifact. So Peter's gonna have to be on the chump block and find another answer plan.
That is a big one. So he doesn't exactly have the clean answer here. And it's looking like the Boseiju is just going to end the game on the spot. Wait.
He'll gain 2 up to 3, but still nothing close to being able to keep playing.
It's looking like Zach is like super scared to cast this dismember because I'm surprised. Again, it's not the dismember, but I mean I get it. When your life total is getting low, like you don't want it to hit 0, so I see it.
All right, Zachary Smith, mono green Tron, advancing to 3-0. Joining our Izzet Prowess player, joining presumably a whole lot of Teamer Rhinos, and a diverse selection of modern decks that can all put up wins right now. So Noah, before we cut the break, I just want to ask you if you were playing in this event, what decks would you be considering?
Yeah, I mean, I as a lover of Preordain, I would probably try to figure out some way to fit it into my deck. And as we saw, Nam earlier on coverage with a pretty clean looking Death Shadow deck, I'm a big fan of like these tempo style decks and deck like that in general. So yeah, I would maybe try to make something like that work. And I also really liked the Dreadhorde Arcanist plan that I saw some people doing. So like maybe I would try the Spirit in that isn't really played at all. Just like one black mana being able to bring back your Dreadhorde Arcanist if someone's killed it, and then also being able to attack and bring back something else. Seems like a really cool, cutesy interaction. I feel like that would be like my ideal deck or whatever. Like if I had a bunch of time to sculpt my perfect modern deck or whatever, maybe some Grixis deck like that. But honestly, looking at these Team of Rhinos decks, they just look so strong and so consistent. That I feel like that is the sort of deck that I would gravitate to. It's similar to the style decks that I like to play, like the tempo style decks. But it is also just like the raw power of it is so strong. You have these 3 mana threats that are just busting out huge creatures for super cheap, and then you have all of this interaction to follow it up. So I think that's the style deck that I would like to play.
Yeah, it's a good choice, no doubt about it. So friends, let me tell you what's going to happen next is we're going to take a break. We're going to give Noah a couple rounds off, and I'm going to be joined by Brad Rutherford. And then for the tail end of day one, it will be Noah back in with Brad before we do it all again tomorrow. So thank you for being here with us. We got a lot more to bring you, so be sure to tune back in either in a few minutes or whenever you can join us later in the weekend. Be back soon.